She wasn't just a face on television, she was a force of nature. For 25 years, Judge Judy didn't compete with daytime TV. She owned it. At her peak, she was earning more than some Fortune 500 CEOs, drawing in audiences that dwarfed even primetime hits. And it wasn't just the money. Her authority reached beyond the courtroom set. When she spoke, people listened. Her sharp tongue and no-nonsense rulings turned Judith Shindlin into one of the most powerful women in entertainment history. She became a symbol of justice, discipline, and wit, wrapped in a black robe and broadcast into millions of homes every single day. But behind the empire and the iron gavel is a story far less known. Because the Judy the world adored isn't the full Judy. There's another side to her journey, a side that reveals regret, vulnerability, and sacrifices she never expected to make. Now, at 82 years old, the same woman who once froze an entire courtroom with nothing more than a single piercing glare now spends her days inside mansions so enormous, so eerily still, that even the silence feels suffocating. A silence that doesn't comfort, but instead lingers, echoing against the walls like a reminder of something missing. The very iron will that built her empire, the same relentless drive that made her a force no one dared to challenge, may also have carved away the connections that matter most, the ones no amount of money or power can replace. Because in her pursuit of greatness, she made choices. Choices that left behind scars, not the kind you can see, but the kind that live deep inside. And those scars, as time has proven, are wounds that no fortune, no empire, and no mountain of wealth can ever truly heal. Because behind the headlines, behind the fortune and the fame, lies a truth no one expected. What really happened to the judge America once hung on every word from? Why does her life today look nothing like the triumph we all thought we knew? The answer isn't just shocking, it's heartbreaking. Judith Susan Bloom wasn't born into wealth or privilege. She grew up in Brooklyn in 1942, the daughter of a dentist father she adored and a practical, sharp-tongued mother who believed that words meant nothing if actions didn't back them up. That hard-edged lesson would become the foundation of her entire identity. But before the television fame, before the empire, before America even learned her name, Judy was simply another young lawyer trying to break into a profession that, at the time, didn't want women standing in courtrooms. When she passed the New York bar in 1965, she thought she was stepping into her future. At just 23, she landed what looked like the perfect job: corporate lawyer for a cosmetics company. Ambitious, sharp, and ready to prove herself, she seemed set. But within 2 years, she made a discovery that would haunt her forever. She despised it. The work drained her, the days felt endless, and every night she was left with the gnawing certainty that this was not her purpose. So Judy did something few young professionals would dare. She walked away. She quit the safe job, turned her back on the corporate world, and chose instead to stay home with her 2 young children, Jamie and Adam. For 5 years, she tried to tell herself that motherhood alone would satisfy her, that raising her children was her true calling. But the restlessness never went away. It burned at her, whispered to her, reminded her that she was built for something more. By 1972, when a friend casually mentioned that there was an opening for a prosecutor in New York's family court system, Judy didn't think twice. She jumped. And with that leap, she stepped into the arena that would forever change her life. She threw herself back into the courtroom, and this time, everything locked into place. Family court wasn't easy. It was messy, raw, and unrelenting. These were cases steeped in heartbreak, abuse, neglect, custody battles, the kind of work that left most people burned out or broken. But not Judy. She thrived on it. She wasn't there to hold hands, win friends, or dress up the truth. She was there for one reason: to cut through excuses, expose the lies, and hand down justice that was swift, sharp, and final.
Her reputation didn't just grow, it exploded. By 1982, her no-nonsense style had caught the attention of New York City's mayor, Ed Koch, who appointed her to serve as a criminal court judge. Just 4 years later, she climbed even higher, promoted to supervising judge of Manhattan's entire family court system. And make no mistake, Judy had a style you could not ignore. She was razor-sharp, brutally direct, and unapologetically unfiltered. To some, she was too harsh. To others, she was pure brilliance. But across the board, there was one rule everyone understood. You did not, under any circumstance, lie to Judge Judy Shindlin. Then came 1993, the turning point. A journalist at the Los Angeles Times wrote a piece on this firecracker of a judge who was shaking the system to its core. That article spread like wildfire. It landed in front of producers at 60 Minutes, who decided to feature her on the show. And when America tuned in, they couldn't look away. This wasn't just another judge in a black robe. This was something television had never seen. A woman who didn't waste time, didn't play games, and didn't care if you liked her or not. She was real, and viewers were hooked. 3 years later, the opportunity of a lifetime came knocking. Television producers pitched her an idea, a courtroom reality show built around her style, featuring real cases and real rulings. She said yes. On September 16, 1996, Judge Judy premiered. And almost instantly, it blew up. Within weeks, millions were watching. Within months, it wasn't just a show. It was a cultural tidal wave. At its peak, Judge Judy pulled in 9 to 10 million viewers every single day, often beating Oprah in the ratings. Judy wasn't just a judge anymore. She was an icon. Her glare, her one-liners, her fearless presence, they became part of American culture itself. And then there was the money. The numbers were jaw-dropping. By 2005, she was raking in $25 million a year. By 2008, that ballooned to $45 million. And by 2017, she was pulling in $147 million annually, making her the single highest-paid person on all of television. Not just daytime, all of it. And here's the kicker. She only worked 52 days a year. That meant for every single day she stepped onto that set, she pocketed close to $900,000. But nobody, absolutely nobody, saw this twist coming. While Judy was busy building an empire in front of millions, the very ground of her personal life was quietly cracking beneath her feet, and those cracks were about to widen into something she could no longer hide. Success on television doesn't always equal peace at home. And for Judith Shindlin, the higher she soared in public, the more pieces of herself she left scattered in private. Her very first marriage should have been the warning sign. In 1964, fresh out of law school, she tied the knot with Ronald Levy, a fellow attorney who looked perfect on paper. They had 2 children together, created what appeared to be a rock-solid family life, and to the outside world, it looked like Judy had it all. But behind closed doors, something was deeply broken. Ronald didn't respect her career. He dismissed it entirely. To him, her work was nothing more than a pastime, a hobby to keep her occupied, something unworthy of real recognition. That attitude might have been tolerated in another generation, but not by Judy. She had clawed her way into a profession that wasn't built to welcome women, and she refused to be belittled in her own home. The resentment didn't erupt all at once. It simmered slowly, year after year, until it finally boiled over. By 1976, after 12 years together, the marriage collapsed. Just like that, she was thrust into life as a single mother, raising Jamie and Adam on her own while trying to carve out a career in a system that was stacked against her. Then came Jerry Shindlin. The very next year, he met her, a sharp defense attorney with a razor wit and a personality bold enough to go toe-to-toe with hers. The spark was instant. By 1977, they were married. To the outside world, they looked unstoppable. Two legal powerhouses who thrived under pressure, who understood the grind, and who seemed built to last. But even the fiercest bonds can snap under the wrong kind of weight. That weight came crashing down in 1990. Judy's father, Murray Blum, the man she often called the greatest thing since sliced bread, passed away. He wasn't just her dad, he was her anchor, her hero, her greatest supporter. And when he died, Judy's world came unglued. She needed Jerry to hold her up, to step into the role of comforter, something he had never been required to do before. But Jerry wasn't wired that way. He was a man who lived on logic, rules, and structure, and grief doesn't obey any of those. Overwhelmed and raw, Judy demanded more from him. She gave him an ultimatum, and instead of responding with compassion, Jerry met her pain with defiance. That was all it took. Judy filed for divorce the very next day. The news shocked everyone, but if there's one thing about Judy, it's that she never does anything halfway. When she makes a move, she makes it final. And in that moment, she was certain, absolutely certain, that walking away was the only choice. Except this time, Judy Shindlin may have been wrong. Within just a year, both of them realized something they never expected. The divorce had been a mistake. The distance hadn't brought them peace. It had only made the emptiness louder. They missed each other. They needed each other. And so in 1991, they remarried. This time, the bond held firm. From that point on, they built a life together, raising a blended family of 5 children. Jerry's 3 from his first marriage, Gregory, Jonathan, and Nicole, and Judy's 2. On the surface, it looked like the perfect second chance, but marriage, as they would soon discover, didn't magically erase the challenges that came with it. Because just as Judy's career was skyrocketing into something unprecedented, her personal life was quietly slipping through her fingers. The world saw Judge Judy as unstoppable, but behind the scenes, she was facing a problem that fame couldn't solve. She was almost never home. The endless filming schedule, the non-stop demand to keep up appearances, and the relentless pressure of production stole the hours that mattered most. She missed the very things she couldn't get back: school plays, birthdays, family dinners, the small everyday moments that quietly shape a childhood. Years later, Judy would openly confess that this became her greatest regret. She knew she had built an empire, but she also knew the cost. That guilt weighed on her constantly, a burden she carried no matter how much success piled up. One of her closest friends admitted that Judy often blamed herself, replaying the same question over and over. Had she done enough as a mother? Deep down, she knew the answer was no. Then in 2011, life delivered a terrifying reminder of just how fragile everything was. In the middle of a live taping, the unthinkable happened. Judy began slurring her words. Her face went slack. In an instant, the sharp, commanding woman who could silence a courtroom disappeared before everyone's eyes. The camera stopped rolling. Paramedics rushed in. She was taken to the hospital, where doctors delivered the chilling news. It had been a mini-stroke, a transient ischemic attack. The outcome could have been devastating. Though she recovered quickly, the experience rattled her to her core. For the first time, Judy had to face her own mortality. She responded the only way she knew how, by fighting back. She began working out daily,
overhauled her diet, and took medication to prevent another attack. But here's the surprising part. She didn't slow down. If anything, she pushed herself harder, as though she could outpace the one thing none of us can escape: time. Today, all 5 of her children have their own lives, their own paths, and their own families. What once was a bustling household is now scattered across distance and years. Family gatherings, when they happen at all, feel less like reunions and more like rare occasions that highlight just how far apart everyone has drifted. The separation isn't just miles on a map. It's a wall built from years of absence, years that can't be rewound or repaired. So when she brought her granddaughter, Sarah Rose, onto Judy Justice as a law clerk, it felt less like a professional choice and more like a deeply personal attempt, a way to hold on to something fragile, a chance to plant her legacy in someone young enough to still remember her not only as a figure on television, but as a presence in their own life. But time has a way of leaving scars, and by the time she reached the pinnacle of her career, the damage in her personal world was already set. The higher her fame climbed, the longer the shadow it cast over those closest to her. One by one, people who once stood at her side began to feel left behind. Even the person who had been by her side for over 20 years couldn't escape the weight of that distance. And then came the controversies, the kind that would shake the image of a woman the public thought they knew so well.
For decades, Judge Judy was untouchable. Audiences adored her. Millions trusted her word. Networks showered her with paychecks that dwarfed even Hollywood's biggest stars. She seemed untouchable, immune to the same scandals that routinely destroyed other public figures. But no empire, no matter how powerful, lasts without cracks. And Judy's were about to become impossible to ignore. The first blow didn't come from a tabloid or an outside critic. It came from within her own production. Former staff members began to speak out, and what they described painted a far darker picture than anyone expected. Behind the polished set, they claimed existed a workplace plagued with harassment, discrimination, and fear. At the center of it all was Randy Douth, the show's longtime executive producer. Allegations against him ranged from inappropriate conduct to verbal abuse, with staffers insisting that voicing a complaint meant one thing: losing your job. One producer, Courtney Bullock, went so far as to file a lawsuit detailing claims of harassment followed by retaliation when she dared to push back. Her story struck a chord, but what made it louder was how many others stepped forward to echo her experience. They said it wasn't an isolated incident. They described a troubling pattern, one that went deeper than personalities and touched the very fabric of how the show was run. Some even alleged racial bias played a role in production decisions, with specific instructions to limit the number of black litigants who appeared in a single episode. These weren't just whispers behind closed doors. Court filings and news outlets laid it all bare for the world to see. And suddenly, the question no one wanted to ask could no longer be avoided. How much did Judy actually know? Her public response was swift. She denied any awareness of misconduct, stood firmly by her team, and continued to back Douth without hesitation. But for a woman who had built her entire empire on accountability, on calling people out for their excuses, their blind spots, and their lies, that defense rang hollow to many. Critics argued that Judy, as the face and force of the show, couldn't wash her hands of what happened behind the curtain. It wasn't just about what the cameras captured, it was about what the people working in the shadows endured. And then there were the cases themselves, the very heart of the show. One of them exploded online, remembered simply as the infamous herpes case. In it, Judy awarded $5,000 to a woman who claimed her ex-boyfriend had knowingly infected her. The ruling was fast, decisive, and final. But soon after, the story took a shocking turn.
The man came forward with medical evidence proving he didn't have herpes at all, which meant Judy had been wrong. Not just wrong, publicly, humiliatingly wrong. Critics pounced on the mistake. They didn't see it as a one-time slip-up, but as proof of something bigger, something troubling. They argued that Judy wasn't always judging based on facts or evidence, but on gut feelings, emotions, and the theatrics of the courtroom. For a show that claimed to stand for real justice, that was a damning accusation. And it left viewers asking an uncomfortable question. If this one ruling was careless, how many others had been just as flawed? Over time, more people began noticing patterns they hadn't questioned before. Litigants who struggled to speak clearly, those with broken English, people without formal education. These voices were often cut short, dismissed, or even mocked in front of millions. What once looked like Judy's brand of tough love started to feel less like firmness and more like cruelty. Social media erupted. Accusations of classism spread fast. Viewers pointed out how Judy seemed especially harsh with poor defendants, those living on government aid, or anyone she deemed irresponsible. The woman who had built her career as a symbol of justice was now being accused of punching down, of humiliating the vulnerable for ratings. And in a cultural moment where conversations about inequality and systemic bias could no longer be ignored, Judy's style, once celebrated, started to feel outdated, even offensive. But perhaps the controversy that cut the deepest didn't come from a stranger at all. It came from someone who had been standing beside her from the very first season. Petrie Hawkins Bird, known to millions simply as Bird. For over 20 years, he was more than a bailiff. He was her balance, her steady presence, the calm voice in a courtroom storm.
Fans adored him. To many, he wasn't just part of the show, he was part of its soul. So when Judy launched Judy Justice in 2021 and Bird's familiar face was nowhere to be seen, fans weren't just disappointed, they were outraged. Viewers who had watched him faithfully by her side for over 2 decades felt blindsided. Then came the truth. Bird later revealed that he hadn't even been consulted about the new show. Not asked to audition, not given a warning, not even a phone call. He discovered the news the same way the rest of the world did, by tuning in and watching someone else sitting in his chair. For a man who had been part of the Judge Judy identity from the very beginning, it was a gut punch. Bird admitted he felt bewildered, hurt, and dismayed. Yet with grace, he still went public and wished Judy success. Judy's reasoning only stirred the pot further. Her explanation? The show, she claimed, needed a younger face to appeal to a new generation. Instead of her longtime partner, she brought in her own granddaughter, Sarah Rose, as a law clerk. To many, it wasn't just a casting change, it was a move that screamed nepotism. Longtime fans felt betrayed. The woman who had spent years lecturing others about loyalty appeared to have tossed aside the man who had been loyal to her for decades. And Bird wasn't the only casualty. Around the same time came Judy's bitter split with CBS, a breakup that grew messier by the day. After 25 years of broadcasting Judge Judy, the network made what they called a business decision, but to Judy, it was nothing short of personal. Instead of moving forward with new episodes, CBS shelled out $99 million just for the rights to keep airing reruns. To add insult to injury, they sidelined Hot Bench, another courtroom show Judy herself had created. What CBS saw as strategy, Judy saw as sabotage. To her, it wasn't just numbers on a ledger, it was an act of disrespect. Judy didn't bite her tongue. She went public, accusing CBS of gambling wrong and disrespecting her hard-earned creation. And if that wasn't enough controversy, lawsuits began swirling.
Rebel Entertainment Partners, the company that had helped launch Judge Judy in its early days, sued both CBS and Judy over profit sharing. Their claim? That they'd been cut out of what was rightfully theirs, especially when new spin-offs like Hot Bench had been launched behind closed doors. The legal battles dragged on for years, tarnishing Judy's ironclad image of authority. Even though she was ultimately found not personally liable, the accusations left a permanent stain. The press smelled blood in the water. Even the tabloids piled on. The National Enquirer published outrageous and false headlines, accusing her of having Alzheimer's disease and even cheating on her husband. Though they later retracted and issued apologies, the damage couldn't simply be erased. For someone who had spent her career meticulously controlling every detail of her public image, the mounting controversies felt like cracks spreading through an empire. For Judy Shindlin, the courtroom queen who had spent decades building a brand around discipline, order, and truth, these blows were devastating, and the public was left to wonder if this was the beginning of her empire's slow unraveling. The woman once thought of as untouchable suddenly looked vulnerable, and the public watched as every crack in her image became impossible to ignore. Yet even with controversy swirling around her name, Judy refused to bow out. Instead, she doubled down. She launched new projects, stayed in the spotlight, and made it clear she had no intention of fading quietly into the background. But that raised the question everyone was asking. Did people still care the way they used to? When Judge Judy wrapped in 2021, it wasn't just the end of a program, it was the closing of an era. For 25 years, Judy had been more than a television personality. She had been a daily fixture in millions of living rooms, a voice of authority that became part of everyday life. But instead of stepping back into retirement, Judy shocked everyone with a bold gamble. She returned, not to network TV, but to streaming, launching Judy Justice on Amazon Freevee. At first glance, it seemed familiar. The real disputes, the sharp rulings, and that signature glare that could silence anyone in seconds. But underneath the surface, something had shifted. The stage was smaller, the audience narrower, and without the wide net of broadcast television, the cultural impact simply didn't hit the same. Judy Justice performed decently for a streaming show, pulling in respectable numbers and even earning her another Daytime Emmy, cementing Judy as the only TV judge in history to win for two entirely separate programs.
And yet, something felt missing. The magic wasn't all there. Without Bird by her side, without the familiar CBS set, the experience just didn't feel like the Judge Judy audiences had grown up with. Sarah Rose, Judy's granddaughter, did her best to fill the gap, but the chemistry wasn't the same. Older fans who had spent decades attached to Bird felt a sense of loss, while younger viewers struggled to connect with the new format. The result was a show that had Judy's name, but not quite Judy's soul. Then came 2025, when Judy made yet another move, this time even more unexpected. She launched Justice on Trial, a docuseries on Prime Video that shifted her role entirely. Instead of handling small claims, Judy stepped into the past, revisiting historic and controversial cases like the Menendez brothers and the Scopes monkey trial. The format was unlike anything she'd done before, blending dramatized reenactments with Judy's own legal commentary and analysis. It was bold, it was different, and it proved once again that Judge Judy wasn't done reinventing herself, even if the world around her had changed. Judy stepped into the role wearing period-appropriate robes, portraying a lower court judge in carefully scripted reenactments, while her tribunal justice team took on the roles of an appeals panel. The idea behind it was ambitious, clever, and clearly designed to spark deeper thinking about how the justice system works. And yet, despite the thoughtfulness behind it, the project slipped almost entirely under the radar. There were no massive billboards, no viral moments sweeping through social media, no conversations at dinner tables across America. The series was quietly dropped onto Prime Video, where only a fraction of the audience that once tuned into her show daily actually saw it. The truth is hard to ignore. Judy's influence has shrunk. At her peak, she was a household name, commanding the attention of tens of millions every single week. Today, on streaming platforms, she's fortunate to pull in just a few million. To younger generations, unless their parents bring her up, she's practically invisible. To them, Judy isn't remembered as the trailblazing judge who changed television. She's more of a meme, a punchline, a fleeting cultural reference. Even her public appearances have dwindled. On the rare occasion she does step out, she looks polished, sharp, and carries herself with the same confidence she always had, even at 82. At a recent event, Samuel L. Jackson introduced her, and observers noted she still radiated that unmistakable presence that once ruled television screens. But those glimpses are rare now. She isn't chasing the spotlight, and just as painfully, the spotlight isn't chasing her. The truth no fan wants to admit is that Judy's era has quietly passed. She hasn't stopped working, she hasn't stopped producing, and she certainly hasn't stopped trying to prove she still matters. But the world around her has moved on. Television has transformed. Audiences have transformed. And at 82 years old, even Judith Shindlin, who once seemed unstoppable, cannot freeze time. Which brings us to the hardest truth of all, what her life really looks like now, behind all those closed doors. Because here's the paradox. At 82, Judith Shindlin has achieved every dream she once chased. A staggering net worth estimated at $440 million. A portfolio of luxury homes scattered across the country. A legacy carved deep into the history of television. The awards, the accolades, the level of fame most people could never even imagine. But with all of that comes a sobering reality. Money cannot buy back the years she lost. It cannot repair the relationships that frayed along the way. And it cannot return the quiet, irreplaceable moments of life that slipped through her fingers while she was busy conquering the world. She spends most of her time now in Florida, living with Jerry, the man who has stood by her side through decades of victories, controversies, and personal battles. To the outside world, their life seems like a dream. Sun-soaked days, a sprawling estate with all the privacy and comfort money can buy, and a marriage that survived storms many thought would sink it. But those closest to her tell a different story, one hidden behind the polished facade.
Behind those guarded gates, Judy wrestles with the realities of aging. The fatigue is constant, not just the kind you shake off with a nap, but the kind that lingers and reminds you every single day that time is undefeated. Her doctors keep a close eye on her, running tests and checkups to make sure she doesn't ignore the warning signs. And yet, even as her body signals her to slow down, she refuses to listen. The mini-stroke she suffered years ago was supposed to be her wake-up call, a warning that she couldn't outrun biology forever. But if you know Judy, you know she has never been one to back down, not even from her own body. So she keeps going. She still pores over case files with the same sharp eye she's always had. She still steps in front of the camera for Judy justice, determined to deliver rulings with her signature authority. She still involves herself in production decisions, making sure her stamp of control is on every detail. To some, it looks like obsession. To others, it looks like fear. The fear that the moment she steps away, the empire she built brick by brick will start to crumble. Or maybe it's something simpler. Maybe work is the only thing she has left that gives her life structure. Her 5 children, Jamie, Adam, Gregory, Jonathan, and Nicole, are grown now, scattered across their own worlds. They have families, responsibilities, and careers that don't revolve around her anymore. The family gatherings that once brought noise and laughter are rare, almost ceremonial when they happen at all. Holidays pass more quietly, the long tables filled with too many empty chairs. The same woman who once commanded a courtroom, whose presence could silence a room with a single glare, now spends nights in mansions where the silence is louder than any gavel she ever struck. To fill that void, she leans on philanthropy, She pours her wealth into causes that matter to her, funding educational programs, offering scholarships, giving young people opportunities that she believes can change the trajectory of a life. She often says she wants kids to have the same fighting chance she had to claw her way toward. And it is meaningful work. It does make a difference. But even with all the lives she touches, it doesn't erase the absence her own children felt growing up. The cost of her empire was always paid in personal currency, and though she may never admit it, that price still lingers in the quiet spaces of her life. Sarah Rose, her granddaughter, and now the law clerk on Judy Justice, once pulled back the curtain on a truth most viewers would never guess. She revealed that beneath Judy's famously tough exterior, there lingers a quiet sadness, a kind of regret that only those closest to her ever truly see. According to Sarah, Judy carries the weight of years where she put her career first, chasing a vision of success so relentlessly that she missed moments she can never get back. Birthdays, holidays, family milestones, those fleeting chances to be present, slipped away in the blur of television tapings and court cases, and that loss still haunts her. Even in her marriage to Jerry, which has endured decades of ups and downs, the gaps remain. Their bond is strong, yes, but even the strongest relationships can't fill every empty space. Jerry, older now, spends much of his time away from the cameras, choosing a quieter life, while Judy, unyielding as ever, keeps pushing forward at her relentless pace. They share a home, but in many ways they live in different worlds, one slowing down, the other refusing to stop. They are together, yet sometimes it feels as though they're standing apart, each consumed by their own silence. At 82, Judy Shindlin embodies a paradox that fascinates and unsettles at the same time. She is proof that a woman can dominate a male-driven industry, rise to the top, and command respect in a way few ever have. She shattered barriers, built a fortune that most could never dream of, and turned herself into a cultural icon, the very face of no-nonsense justice. But in the process, she exposed a far harsher reality. When success is measured only in wealth and fame, the price can be devastating. You may find yourself surrounded by mansions overflowing with luxury, yet haunted by the silence of memories never made and the fragile bonds that may never be fully mended. So what do we take away from Judy Shindlin's story? On the surface, she is the very definition of power and success. A woman who stood tall in a world built for men, who turned her voice into an empire, and who became one of the most recognizable figures in television history. But peel back that outer layer, and there's a different picture. One of loneliness, of missed birthdays and unshared dinners, of a family that grew up in her absence. Even with Jerry by her side, their worlds don't always fully connect. At 82, Judy's life is both a triumph and a cautionary tale. She showed the world that women can win in arenas once thought impossible, but also that winning at all costs can cost you the things that matter the most. In the end, her story asks us, what's success really worth?